Good morning, good morning. This is Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99, broadcasting here from Kingston. And we link with Ivy Jam in New York at midday. So welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, the 28th of March, and I wanted to focus on what I consider to be an urgent and important topic today. A few weeks ago, we had a discussion on this program about the changing age structure of our population. Greater access to health care, yes, because in spite of the many problems we have in our health services, the situation in terms of accessing health care is better than it was 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. So better access to health care plus improved medicines with the advancement of medical research and greater lifestyle consciousness. People are more informed and more diligent about their lifestyle choices, their diet, abstaining as much as possible from alcohol and tobacco, engaging in physical exercise, all of these things. And they have all resulted in people living longer lives. So people are living longer. 20 years ago, the number of people aged 65 and over was 190,000. Today, that number has grown to 255,000. It has increased by more than a third in the last 20 years. But how are these people living? Are they able to make ends meet? Are they able to feed themselves properly, to pay for the medication that persons in that age group will most likely need to take on a daily basis to deal with the problems of old age problems, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart problems, kidney disease, you name it. Not to mention the rent and the light bill and the water rates that have to be paid. Let us look at some numbers. There are private pension plans that have around, the last time I looked at the numbers, 142,000 members, subscribers. About 17,000 of those have already retired, and they receive a monthly pension that is more or less sufficient to take care of their basic needs. That leaves about 238,000. There are about 33,000 persons who are retired government workers, and they receive a monthly pension from the government. So that leaves, if you follow the numbers, a little over 200,000. How do they manage? 80,000 of those are on the National Insurance Scheme, so they receive an NIS pension. But how much is that NIS pension? It depends on the number of contributions that they paid for each year that they worked. Those who work full-time and paid every week or every month receive $3,400 a week. Those who contributed less would receive less. Now, even $3,400 a week can hardly buy enough food, let alone pay for medicines, help with the rent, the light bill, the water bill, transportation, because they have to move around. The NIS itself is in a bit of a precarious position. The amount that it has to pay out to NIS pensioners is less, well, not just to NIS pensioners, but to other beneficiaries as well, is less than the amount of money that it is collecting from employees and employers. Partly because the NIS pensioners are living longer, so they stay on the pension arrangement for a longer period of time. NIS is able to meet these payments only because of the income that the contributions earn from investments that are made by the NIS fund managers. You know, the money that is collected is invested in various things, and it earns interest or it earns dividends, it earns profits. So that helps to meet the payment obligations that it has to deal with. And then there are persons, many persons, who are not NIS pensioners, who are not NIS contributors, sorry. Most of the small farmers, the vendors, tradesmen, not to mention those who hustle a little work wherever they can find it, on a construction site, washing cars, cutting lawns. They are not NIS contributors, most of them, even though they could have joined as self-employed, but most of them don't. They have no NIS pension to look forward to, small as that NIS pension is. So that when they reach the age where they can no longer jump around and hustle for a living, when they are at home, some of them bedridden, some of them simply too old to work, unable to find work. They have no NIS pension, even the $3,400 a week to count on. And that is why the government, many years ago, introduced the PATH program, which includes providing a cash benefit to those in need but who do not qualify for an NIS pension. There are 61,000 people who currently receive that benefit under PATH, cash payment for elderly beneficiaries. But how much is that benefit? About $70 a week. That cannot even buy a half pound of flour or a quarter loaf of hard dough bread. It's a quarter loaf because when you go into the country parts, they retail the bread, you know. I mean, you get a loaf of bread, they cut it in half and quarter and sell you a quarter loaf. But that $70 a week couldn't buy a quarter loaf of hard dough bread. I don't want to overstate the problem. Some of these 255,000 senior citizens who are not in pension plans, whether private pension plans or NIS. Some of them were able, through their own good sense and through the means that they enjoyed, were able to save and put aside some money in the bank. And some of them are able to live off the interest low as those interest rates are now. Some of them may have invested in real estate. You buy a house and you rent it out, and they collect the rent, and the rent becomes their pension. Or they may have bought shares on the stock exchange, and they collect dividends, which becomes their pension. But they are a small minority. Many of our old people, thousands and thousands of them, are catching hell. Finding food each day is a big challenge. Talk about living from hand to mouth. That is their everyday experience. The government has been talking about pension reform. That has two aspects. Private pension schemes are hobbled by some archaic rules and restrictions. If you work with a company and you join a pension plan in that company, in which both you and your employer make contributions, you face a problem in that if you leave that company to go and work with another, your pension arrangements were not transferable. They were not portable, which is the word that is used in the pension industry. All you were entitled to is a refund of the contributions that you made. You wouldn't get the contributions that your employer made towards your pension. If you had stayed with that company. So many persons who could get a better paying job elsewhere were forced to stay with that company because to lose their employer's contribution to their pension was too high a price to pay for that better paying job. And then there were restrictions as to the kind of investments that pension funds could be placed in. Those persons who manage those pension funds invest the contributions in order to earn money, so as to ensure that when a pension has to be paid, inflation would not have eaten out the value of that pension. But they were prevented from investing that money in certain types of activities that would have earned, good interest to boost their ability to pay reasonable pensions. Those issues are being addressed. Some reforms have already been instituted, and others are being actively pursued. There are also issues that are being addressed in relation to government pensions, and the Minister of Finance, Mr. Nigel Clark, recently advised Parliament that detailed proposals are expected to be brought to Parliament in the course of the coming financial year, which starts end of this week. When you work with the government in a pensionable post, the government undertakes to pay you a pension when you reach retirement age, which is normally 60. I think there are plans to increase it over time to 65. The amount you are paid as pension is calculated on the basis of your years of service and the salary level you were at when you retired. But because inflation will erode the value of that pension over time, the government periodically grants an increase in the amount that a pensioner is paid. The payment of pensions to government workers is a direct charge on the budget, and that is something that is enshrined in the Constitution. The government can't one day get up and say, well, things are tight. For example, the COVID pandemic has turned everything upside down. So this year, we're not going to be able to meet the pension payments. No, sir. Under the Constitution, it has to find the money. One of the priority charges on the budget. I think the most important charge after debt. And the amount of money that it has to find has been increasing each year by leaps and bounds. Again, because pensions are living longer, and because the amount that a person is paid for pension has to be increased from time to time to keep up with inflation. Let me give you some numbers again. 20 years ago, the government had to set aside a little less than $5 billion to pay government pensioners. This year, remember what I said 20 years ago? Less than $5 billion. This year, it has to set aside more than $40 billion to pay pensioners. The percentage of the budget that has to be set aside to pay government pensioners has more than doubled in the last 20 years. So the government is looking to restructure the government pension arrangements. The thinking, as I understand it, is for both the government and the government workers to make monthly contributions towards the pension fund. I hope that this means that the government wouldn't have to set aside a provision in the budget. This year, all of $40 billion to meet the pension payments. It would have to make provision, of course, for its share of the contributions. I hope as well that a proper pension fund management system will be put in place, similar to what exists for the NIS contributions, in order to manage a fund, to ensure proper investment of those funds, not only to earn income to be able to increase pensions payments over time, but also, and this is important, to enable those funds to be available as a source of investment for the development of the country. Now, there are some countries, listen to me on this one, there are some countries, the Scandinavian countries in particular, Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, they take pensions seriously. They provide a pension to every one of its citizens once they reach retirement age. And a good pension too. But it costs a lot of money to do this. And in order to be able to do this, their GCT rate is 25%. Ours is 15%. But if you walk into a shop in Norway or Sweden or Denmark and you buy something, you're paying 25% GCT on it. If we were to do that, and this is where I'm trying to tickle your own thinking, if we were able to do that, or if we decided to do that, we would be able to pay every Jamaican, once they reach the age of 65, a pension equivalent to the new minimum wage, which is to come into effect end of this week, $9,000 a week. That would make one hell of a difference to the quality of life that our senior citizens are able to experience. But the big question is, would we be willing to pay a 25% GCT to provide that benefit, to provide that guarantee that in the sunset of our lives we would be able to meet our basic needs and not have to go to bed hungry or deprive ourselves of the basic medicines we need, or to walk around the community hoping that, people will take pity on us and hand us a $100 bill so that we can go to the shop. The challenges of old age, the pension predicament, what can be done and what we are prepared to do about it. That's what we're talking about today. Pensions. When we come back. Welcome back. It's Jamaica Live. We are on Bridge 99. Today we're talking about pension. Perhaps the most important element of Social Security. When you get to an age where, because of infirmity, illness of one kind or another, you can no longer earn money. You can no longer work. But you have to live. You have to eat food. You have to buy medicines. And the big issue is, how do you manage? As I said in the opening comments that I made, a lot of people in Jamaica, senior citizens over 65, I'm using 65 as a kind of appropriate age for retirement. A lot of those people don't have a pension. And apart from those who own a little asset here and there, own a house that they rent out and that kind of thing, how do they live? Some are on private pensions, some depend on NIS. I pointed out that NIS offers pension as $3,400 a week. Good God, you can't live off that. So we wanted today to explore the pension challenges as a nation and what can be done. And we're pleased to be joined by two people who have far more expertise in this matter than I do. Mr. Conroy Rose, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Victoria Mutual Pension Management Company. And I'm not sure whether it's Mr. or Mrs. Kandice Stewart, who is the portfolio accountant at VM Pensions Management. Both of them from Victoria Mutual, which is one of the major pension management companies. Mr. Rose, Ms. Stewart, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Sir Gordon. How are you, sir?
Tell me now. I want to start the discussion with you talking about private pensions, because that perhaps is your primary area of expertise, but I'm sure you have enough knowledge of the pension parameters to help me to address the wider issue as to how Jamaicans approach the sunset of their lives. Now, the last time I looked at the numbers, in terms of the private pension plans, and you can correct me if I go wrong, they have about 142,000 subscribers. You have an asset value in terms of the funds under pension management of some $700 billion. If I work my arithmetic, that works out at about $5 million per member, which is money that is there, it's being invested, and the returns from that are able to provide a reasonable pension for the members of these private pension plans. But I know from my own experience when I was in public life that pension plans faced some serious obstacles in terms of restrictions. There's the issue of portability, that you couldn't move your pension arrangement from one company to another. There were also serious restrictions in terms of what you could invest those funds in. And the whole investment environment has changed so rapidly that those restrictions were harmful to the effective management of pension funds. But I gather that there have been some reform measures introduced. You want to tell us what those are? I wasn't able to catalog those myself. What changes have been made to make your life easier and to make the fortunes of your pensioners better?
Okay, thank you for that question, Sir Olin. So just very quickly, so you're correct to say that there are a large number of Jamaicans that are not currently contributing to a pension plan. It's very sad, Sir Golden. And you made mention about the three pillars of our pension system: the private pension system, the private pension arrangement, the NIS, and the voluntary contribution. And as you rightly said, the private space is a space that I am in. But very unfortunately, less than 13% of the working population. So it's very important for me to say this. So even though you made mention about the private pension and being in the private pension industry, based on the level of contribution, it will be able to provide some amount of pension to the contributors. But very unfortunately, less than 13% of the 1.3 million people in the working population, less than 13% contribution to a pension plan. And before I really...
Are you excluding from that the NIS contributors?
Yes. This is just a private. We're not talking about the NIS because it just made mention about the $3,000. So I'm just talking about my private space, the private pension plan, less than 13%. And another important statistic I want to share with you: the number of elderly persons in Jamaica is expected to grow to about 500,000 by 2030. And it's projected to be approximately 22% of the total population by 2050. So people who are 80 and over are projected to increase by 2.5 times, from 48,000 in 2010 to about 117,149 by 2050. Why I tell you these statistics? Because it goes to show the kind of problem that we're going to have if we don't address this pension situation. So let me just now move over now to the question that you asked. It was very critical for me to set the stage of how critical the problem is. So you asked some question about the pension reform that we are anticipating coming forward. So Dr. Nigel Clark pointed out that we are going to be seeing some changes in the legislation. And he spoke about portability. And he spoke about that's one of the main reasons why persons are not encouraged to participate in a pension plan. Because when persons are moving from one job to another, based on how the portability rules were, persons were forced to just take their contribution and move on, and rather than transferring it to a pension plan, because the employer's contribution wasn't really available because the vesting periods were very long. What do I mean by vesting? The period that would allow an employee their entitlement to their employer's portion, those were long periods, 5 years, some 3, some depending on the plan rules. But what Dr. Nigel Clark pointed out in his presentation is that this vesting period is going to change to a shorter period. That would be an incentive for persons that when you leave one job, because you're going to be moving with both benefits, your contribution as well as the employer's contribution, you'll be encouraged to just sign it over into a plan of your desire. Whether or not the company that you're moving to, it has a company-sponsored plan, which we generally call a superannuation plan, or if the company doesn't have a plan, you can put it on your own in an individual retirement scheme.
How seamless will that transfer be?
It's simple. It is so simple because once you have a pension contribution with an organization, for us at VM Pensions Management Limited, all you need to do is to sign up. If the company that you're moving to do not have a pension plan, all you need to do is to open a pension account with VM Pensions Management Limited. You just write your employer give them instruction. It's just like a money transfer.
All right, tell me now. Tell me now. If I'm leaving a company that has an established pension plan,
correct,
and portability is instituted, so I can move not only my contributions but my employer's contributions as well.
correct.
And I go to a company that does not have a pension plan, how available are independent pension plans that I can sign up on? What sort of choices do I have?
There's a wide availability of these individual retirement schemes, and let me call them approved, because you might have schemes out there which are not approved, but you want to find approved retirement schemes, and there are a number of approved retirement schemes operating under the
So would I have a menu of choices to look to see what the benefits are, what the conditions are, and which one would best suit my circumstances?
That's correct. And when you're looking at these plans, Sir Golden, it's very important to find a reputable company, a company that has been around for many years. I'm not really bragging about the VM Group, but a company that has been around for 143 years, a company that has weathered the storm, because you're talking about your money and your retirement money. So you want to ensure that this is going to be placed in the hands of experts, persons. And the next thing is two things you want from your pension. You want returns and you want good service. So I would encourage persons to go ahead, Sir Golden.
I would add a third. You want assurability. Now, have we had any situation that you can recall? I'm just searching my own memory, where a pension fund went belly up. In other words, I want to know, what risks am I taking when I sign up with a pension fund?
All right. So there, once you're investing, there are always inherent risks. Because remember, in 2020, in the belly of COVID, a lot of pension funds, their assets, their value fell because of what was happening internationally. So persons who were retiring at that point in time, they were encouraged to delay their investment, their retirement, because pension values reduces at that point in time. So we have seen situations like that. So I'm not going to say there are no inherent risks, but they would have their pension, but the value would have reduced. So
how robust is the flow of communication from pension fund managers to their subscribers so that people can be fully informed?
Yes. So what I can tell you about the VM Group, and I know about what we have, so I don't know about the others. We have a very robust communication system. So the first thing that we have what we just had a series called the Debunk Series. Typical Jamaican, typical young person don't know anything about pension. They think that pension is an insurance policy. So we have a very intense education program that we educate all persons about everything about pension. And we have newsletters, we have town hall meetings, we have persons that are here to provide this kind of information. We have online service. So we really have this kind of support because VM Group is on a bold mission to transform lives through education. Because one of the reasons why persons are not really participating in pension, because the lacking of the knowledge. Persons don't have no clue about knowledge. And even those who have knowledge, they're not doing it because they don't know the benefit of it. So because we're on a mission, based on how we were formed by some clergymen after slavery to really transform Jamaican life. So we are on a mission now through education, and probably you saw what we did with the taxi operators. We have recently, nobody look at this group. We have recently signed off with Hart, the transport operators for development for sustainable services. We are the official pension provider, because what we are doing, we are providing the education, we are providing to them how to evaluate our service. What is it that you need to look for from us in order providing you with that service? How do you look to ensure that the persons who are managing your investments are really acting in a very sound manner? So you're right, Sir Golden. It's three things. One, you want to ensure that you get good returns. You want to ensure that you better inflation. Two, you want to ensure that someone is there. It's more than just a business imperative, providing you with that kind of educational support because know when not to make these decisions, know when to move. And one of the things I like, Sir Bolin, about this, the individual retirement scheme, the approved retirement scheme, persons have the ability to participate in the investment of their pension plan. If you have that kind of savviness, for persons who do not have that kind of knowledge, that is how we come into play, because no one outfit fits everybody, and that is why it's important for advice.
We didn't invite Miss Stewart here just to listen to us, and I don't want her to get vexed with me. Miss Stewart.
That's true.
Tell me now. Part of the problem with pension fund management has been the very tight restrictions in terms of what you can do with people's pension money in terms of investment. Has that improved, or what are the changes that are being contemplated, and what difference will that make?
So, good morning again, Sir Golding, and thank you for having me, Miss Kandice Stewart. So we definitely have improved in the different products that we can invest in. It's not as stringent as it was before, because we do realize different products and the different returns that we can get on these products. And of course, we want to ensure that our pensioners are getting the best returns and the best buck for their money as it relates to their retirement and as it relates to their pension when it is that they've decided that they don't want to work anymore. So there has been reform in that sense, where it's not as stringent. Of course, it is still stringent because we are talking about person's money. So we have included various bonds that we have issued by companies and equity, and they should be established under the laws of the Jamaican that is provided. And also, we've enabled the pension funds to invest in private equity and venture capital for the first time. So this was something that this was something that never used to happen under the pension schemes, investing in equities. But now we're moving towards that, where we're investing in different bonds, corporate and government issued, investing in equities, so that our pensioners and the Jamaican public, of course, can get better returns and make the process just a little bit more.
Well, give us an idea of what kind of investments you're not allowed to take to participate in.
So bonds that are not investment grade, they call bonds that are not A grade investment bonds. Those were not allowed. So we have to invest in investment grade bonds, like bonds from the North America, including U.S. bonds, Treasury bonds, and those kind of things. In terms of private equity and venture capital, the regulations allow us only to participate about 5% of our funding into that. So there's still some amount of limitation there in terms of private equity and venture capital.
Well, give me some more details, because one of the things that when I was in office and I had to look at it, one of the things that jumped out at me was the unleashed potential of pension funds to be a driving force in terms of development. But at the same time, as you will quickly interrupt me to say, you can't play footloose with people's pension money. Because when they retire, they have to be assured that they're going to be able to go to the supermarket and so on. So let me ask you the question. Let us say that I am a private developer, no?
Correct.
And I am planning a development. I'm going to build, 50 townhouses somewhere. I can go to the bank, but the bank going to give me all kind of hassle. Is there a pension fund that I can approach to say, hey, I'm building 50 townhouses. This is the marketability. We have done all the market research that we need to do. We're going to pre-sell. This is the profit we hope to make. Is that the kind of thing that pension funds could take on and say, well, all right, we're going in and we expect to be back out in 36 months, and this is the profit we expect to make? Is that accommodatable within that 5%? One, and two, would it be safe unprofitable for the pension fund industry if that 5% were increased?
I mean, so yeah, the answer to the first question is you're correct, yes. Within that 5% in terms of the venture capital and private equity, a developer could approach any licensed pension investment manager and would seek that kind of funding because we are now permissible to operate within that 5%.
Is 5% too low?
In my view, let me give you my view because I think it is a good start.
Yeah, I think so too.
It is a good start, Sir Bruce, because this wasn't something before, and it requires a certain level of expertise to really get involved into this kind of development space. So the 5%, I believe, in my view, it's a good start.
I think it's a fair start.
And it is a start where we need to examine it as an industry. We need to look and see how it works within the first 2 years and evaluate. And from that, then we can look at increasing the percentage. But from a starter point of view, you said it rightly. We're investing person's money. At the same time, it can be an engine for growth. But we want to do it in a very prudent manner. So in my view, I believe a 5% is a good start. And then now we can evaluate and assess as we go forward. But it is absolutely an area that I believe when you look at international and across the world, pension funds play a very integral part in the development of the economy. So you're absolutely correct, Sir Bruce.
Well, let me move the discussion a bit because we're talking, and I don't use the term pejoratively, we're talking about a privileged set of people, no? The 142,000 pension members that you have, 17,000 of whom are now receiving their money. But tell me now, take the shoemaker, which seems to be a dying breed of people. Nowadays, when you buy shoes and it needs repair, you throw it away and buy another one. But you take a shoemaker who, he's now 67 years old, 70. He has diabetes or he has suffered a stroke. He can't repair shoes anymore. He never contributed to NIS, never availed himself of the opportunity to become a self-employed contributor. But even then, the best that he could get is $3,400 a week. He still has to live. He may live another 10, 15, 20 years. He has to eat. He has to buy food. He has to buy medicines. He's not now provided. PASS jumps in to try and help him. But PASS only gives him about $70 a week, which, as I said at the opening, that can't buy a half pound of flour. Now, what do we do with those people? What provision do we make, or do we just simply leave them to the charity of the churches and the charitable organizations? And, you know, every Christmas we put on like a treat for them. And then for the next 12 months, them batter until the next Christmas come around and put on another treat. Can we do better than that? I cited, for example, the experience of the Scandinavian countries, where every citizen, once you reach retirement age, you are guaranteed a pension, and a good pension at that. But then in order to do that, they charge a GCT of 25%. Now, if we were ever to propose that here, the streets would probably be locked down tomorrow under protest. But we still have a problem. I mean, do we, you know, I don't want to overstate the problem, no? Because a lot of these people are supported by their families. Mm-hmm. You know, the shoemaker may have had a son who is an electrician and he does good work and he earns a good amount of money and he makes sure that he take care of him daddy. So there are some of them like that. But there are many out there that I used to come across during my period in public life that they've been abandoned by their families or they never have no family in the first place. They're catching hell. Now, what do we do? Do we try to see, all right, this $70 a week to get on the path? Do we try and make it $150 a week? What can $150 a week do? do we kind of make it mandatory now for people to sign up with NIS? But then if you sign up with NIS, you get a $3,000 a week, which does more than the $70, but still can't do all that much. How do we address this huge gap in terms of pension security for the vast majority of our senior citizens? I want to get your thoughts on this. I want to start with you, Kandice.
Okay. How we can address this issue, and so this issue is in its current state. We've already passed it. What we can do now, corrective measures. I do believe that one, our NIS is already mandated that once you're working, you definitely contribute to that. But your private pension plan is something that you should definitely start right now. Wherever you are, wherever stage you are in life, your right now needs to be literally right now. I know that a lot of us as Jamaicans, a lot of the older Jamaicans or wiser Jamaicans, they do believe in picnic pension, and that doesn't necessarily stand the test of time, because in your wiser years, you definitely want to be a little bit more independent. You want to ensure that old age poverty does not get a hold of you. So definitely putting these pension plans, I want to say a little bit more in our faces so that we know of its benefits, so that we know of its importance, and that even for those persons who don't necessarily think it's important, we ensure that we kind of put it on their plate, in their table, in front of them to say, hey, this is something.
But how do we do that? How do we fund it?
So,
where's the money going to come from?
So, Sir Bruce, let me suggest something just to add to what my colleague just mentioned. So what I'm suggesting is an auto enrollment.
Yes.
An auto enrollment process where once you're employed, it's two levels. Once you're employed, you're auto enrolled by your employer. The government needs to make it mandatory, right? That's the first step.
Enrollment into what?
Into a pension plan. Right? So it's auto enrollment into a pension plan. So once you're employed, it's supposed to be mandatory that you're auto enroll into a pension plan.
Yeah, but you're talking about the same people who are in NIS.
Yes.
What happened to the vendor down on the Halfway Tree Road?
That is what I'm telling you now about the vendor in Halfway Tree Road, and I want to give you an example. There was a vendor one morning I was coming to work, Sir Bruce, and in COVID time there's usually a tent that is usually erected on the outside. So immediately I decided to talk, and there was a vendor under the tent, and I spoke about pension. And when I spoke to the vendor agreed that she's self-employed, she wants to open a pension plan. She started a pension plan. And you would be amazed that vendor is making a contribution of a decent amount every single month. But that person never had the knowledge before. Nobody took the time out to have that discussion about the person. The person thought that pension was an insurance policy. So if hard times reaches you, it's going to lapse. That's what the person thought it was an insurance policy.
But Conroy, Conroy, argue with me a little bit.
Yes,
people, I don't know that we can say that people are lacking in knowledge about NIS. The persons who come and work at VM, or the persons who work at this radio station that I'm broadcasting from, NIS is deducted from their wages, and NIS contribution is made by their employer, and that money goes to the NIS, and when they reach retirement age, there is a benefit for them to get. But NIS has been in place now since 1966. People have been told repeatedly, even if you're not in a formal employment, you can enroll as a self-employed contributor. But the barbers out there, the hairdressers, the gardeners, they're not enrolling. There is not a lack of information. It's just that for them look at money, by the time them take care of the baby mother and them buy a Guinness stout, there's nothing left to put into no NIS. But when they get to 65, 70, and they can't work anymore, they become a burden on the society. How does the society respond to that burden?
All right. So this is how the society, as I said before, one, you should create a pension fund. They call it micro pension, where it doesn't matter how much that you have, no matter how small it is, you can make a contribution to your pension.
You're not following me, you know. Them won't do it.
No, but I'm telling you,
which is why in Sweden and Norway and Denmark, them not taking that chance. Them just say, listen, no, pay the taxes whenever you buy something. We're going to take the taxes out of you. When you get old, you have your pension to collect. We're not arguing with you as to whether or not it's a good thing for you to do. We're telling you that it's a good thing, and therefore you must pay for it from now.
So that's, you're right, Sir Bruce. That's an alternative, and that's an alternative the lawmaker would have to make. And then again, you'd have to take into consideration, as you rightly said, in Jamaica, you might have a riot. But then again, that's a decision the lawmaker would have to make, Sir Bruce. But being in the private space, and I've seen it work jointly, because the three pillars, Sir Bruce. You have the government space, you have the private space. So it usually complements each other. Yeah. So what we're talking about, Sir Bruce, until we reach that stage where we can make those the government can make those, I decide to implement those kind of decisions. What we're saying in the interim to go forward is that what we have seen that has been working is in the private space, is encouraging persons, make it mandatory.
Conroy, with the greatest of respect to you, and I have a great deal of respect for you, it now work. You have 142. You have 142,000 people in private pension plans now. 142, right? 1,000. You have a whole heap of people out there who not in a pension plan, and there's no inducement you can give them. You tell me about the vendor on Half a Tree Road. That is wonderful, but that is 1 out of a million.
Let me give you another. With all due respect, let me give you another example. I canvassed about 7 household helpers. I did a survey with some household helpers. And I went to ask them, can you tell me about pension? They say, yeah, man, insurance. You just pay your insurance and that's it. And I went around and we did about 10 of them. And at the end of the day, when I asked them what is pension, majority of them, 90% of them don't know. And they don't even know that you could save as little as 3%, any amount.
But how much is the helper earning? $9,000 a week? $10,000? $12,000?
$100,000 per month. 5%. What is 5% of 100, Sir Bruce? Let us look at
How many helpers earn $100,000 a month?
You know what is 100,000? 80,000 a month, Sir Bruce.
Most helpers that I know of, barely make $3,000 a day. Barely.
Another question.
If as much.
How many helpers you know by phone cards? How many helpers you know by a $5,000?
Yeah, they buy a $100 phone card.
But guess what, sir?
And they will buy that 2 or 3 times a week.
Sir Bruce, I know you're the mustard seed, Sir Bruce. And this is the thing, Sir Bruce, I want to talk about. Culture. Just imagine you are saving $100 from the time you left high school, Sir Bruce. And you're talking about tax-free returns. We're not talking about returns that are taxed. So just imagine persons having knowledge.
$100 a week, Conroy. $100 a week can't cut it. We have to find a way to provide a sturdy, robust basis for people to be able to live when they get to retirement age and they can no longer work. The private pension schemes are doing their bit, and that is good, and I commend them for that. Correct. But I'm concerned about the larger population of people out there who depend on either NIS or PATH, and the even larger population that don't have either PATH or NIS to depend on. And they depend on charity. And some of them die of malnutrition because they just cannot buy the food that they need to sustain their bodies.
Correct. You're correct, sir.
I'm running out of time. It's been a good discussion. I perhaps have to go revisit it, but I'm up against a critical time break. So I want to thank both of you very much for joining me today. We have to continue this discussion. It's important.
Yeah, very good discussion.
Yes, we should continue. And thank you very much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Good then.
All right.
We take a break. We'll be back. Welcome back. It's Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99. Today we're talking about pensions, the issue of pensions, and the situation in which so many of our senior citizens find themselves. They worked all their lives. Some of them had to hustle. Many of them are not career people, so they jump around. They do some farming. They do some higglering. Some of them are tradespeople, barbers, shoemakers, carpenters, masons, you name it. Some of them are just hustlers. You get a little work here, you get a little work there, and there is a little activity taking place. You're trying to see if you can grab a little work. But when they reach the age where they can no longer work because of illness, infirmity, or just unemployability. I mean, how many people are prepared to employ somebody who is 70 years old? They find themselves facing the evening of their years, preparing now to go face their maker. And they can't even feed themselves. They struggle every day just to find food to eat. And not overstating the problem, there's a lot of poverty in the country. Some of them, in the rural areas, you have a lot of poverty, but they still manage to survive because, breadfruit is often available on the tree, and you plant a piece of yam, you grow some callaloo, you batter and you kind of make do. But this cannot be the quality of life that we want our senior citizens to have to prepare themselves to face when they become senior citizens. And when I made the opening remarks, I gave you the numbers in terms of the number of persons who are okay because they have formal pension arrangements, the number of persons who are NIS pensioners who are not okay because NIS only pays at maximum. And at maximum, I mean some people don't get that much, but at maximum $3,400 a week, which nobody can really live off. I mean, $3,400 a week can buy only so much. And then there are the path people. These are the ones that, the government take pity on, and they give them like $70 a week to help them live. $70 a week. Less than $100. I mean, $70 a week, what you buy with that? A half pound of flour. Then what else you buy to go with the flour? And where you find that money from? So those are the issues that we've been talking about. And I want to talk to Beauregard, in New York. Is he online? I don't know if he's online yet, because I want to talk with him, because I want to get his perspective. America has a completely different system, of course. Beauregard, are you there? Not there yet. We're going to get back to him. But because in America, they have a very elaborate social security system. Once you get your social security number, there are certain things that you're entitled to. Not only pension, social security pension, but if you're unemployed, you can get a benefit, and if you have children, you can get a benefit for that, and if you're sick, you get a benefit. Amazing. There's somebody I spoke with recently who told me that about the checks that they had collected for the COVID relief. And the lady told me that what she collected for COVID relief was more than what she was earning before COVID. That's the kind of thing that America provides, which is no wonder that they run the kind of deficits that they do run, but because they have the strongest currency in the world, they are able to they're able to finance it. They borrow a lot of money from all over the world, including China and Russia. A lot of American debt is scattered all over the world. Some of it here too. I mean, there are Jamaicans here who invest in U.S. Treasury bills. When you invest in U.S. Treasury bills, what do you think you're doing? You're financing the U.S. deficit. That's what you're doing, so that you are providing the money. You get your interest on it, of course, but you're providing the money to enable America to provide all these wonderful benefits. A poor little country like Jamaica can't. We're not in that league, so we can't do it. But that's the name. Beauregard.
Good afternoon, Mr. Golden.
Big man, I want to talk to you. We're talking pensions today.
Yes, sir.
And I know that in America, the pension business is a serious thing over there.
Mm-hmm.
How does it work? I get the impression over there that if once you have a Social Security registration, Social Security number,
yes,
you're guaranteed that when you can't work no more, you collect a little check every month. Is so it go?
Yes, that how it is. That is how it is here in the United States of America. Once you have retired, you reach that retirement age, there's a Social Security check that you get each and every month.
And is that check is something that the average person can live off, or it's just a little supplement?
It depends on how long they'll be getting that check for, and I'm not sure how much each person's pension or Social Security check is. I would guess that it might be varies depending on, the type of job that you were doing prior to retirement. But, I'm not sure. A lot of people have lived off of it, and, people also save their own money just in time for, when they retire and no longer have that money coming in.
But once you have a Social Security number and you reach a certain age, that money is going to come. Is
Yes.
that what you say?
And you have to work. You have to have had a job and work.
Yeah.
Yes.
You would have to have had a job, no?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And in the course of that job, you would have contributed from your wages to that Social Security, no?
Yes, in that form. Yeah, they take those monies out and you get that back after you have retired in the form of a Social
So
Security.
it's kind of like our NIS here.
Yes, sir.
Except
Yes.
that I suspect that in America the coverage is much greater.
Yes,
Our
it is.
NIS here, for example, the last time I looked at the numbers, we had something, I think it was under 400,000 persons contributing out of a workforce of 1.3 million.
Mm.
So it means that 2/3 of the workforce is not contributing to NIS. And these, of course, would include, people like the small farmers, the barber, the hairdresser,
Mm-hmm.
the vendor down at Coronation Market, the taxi operator.
Mm-hmm.
Since they are not employed to a formal company,
Yes.
they
pay
don't make the
taxes.
contribution. And when they
Yes.
get old and they can't drive the taxi no more, they don't have no benefit to claim.
No, sir. In Jamaica, just like the conversation that you were having last week about, the monies that it takes to educate the country. Some of the parents and older folks there in Jamaica, they didn't get the opportunities that, kids are getting today. And, some of them have really and truly saved up their money. And in the form of investing in their children, that now becomes their pension.
That's a pension. So that when those children turn them doctor and them nurse and them
Yes.
teacher and so on,
Yes.
them sure that them don't go to bed hungry.
Right.
Well, I imagine that's a form of pension, and you can't knock that because that's so much part of our culture here, no?
True indeed. True indeed.
How is it in New York?
It's about 30-something degrees today, 36 degrees right now. It's very cold. A very cold night we had last night.
I mean, at the end of March, when you're going to shake off all of that and get some warmth?
Well, hopefully, it's up and down, so hopefully the rest of the week will warm up.
Mm.
Yeah, man.
And how are the Jamaicans up there? Them all right?
Yes, they are doing fine. The Jamaicans are doing okay. We're just upset with the reggae boys right now, but we'll get over it.
Well, big up the West Indies cricket team.
All right, true.
And big up the women's cricket team because they have advanced.
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
what
It's a
can
good
I
look.
tell you?
Yeah,
You win some, you lose some, no?
True indeed.
All right, Bo. Nice hearing from you.
You too, sir.
We're talking pensions today. We had an interesting discussion with two representatives from Victoria Mutual Pensions Management. And we're now going to be joined by Mrs. Sanya Goffe. Now, this is an important lady. She's a lawyer attached to the law firm Hart, Muirhead, and Fatta. But more importantly, she's president of the Pension Association of Jamaica. Mrs. Goffe, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mr. Golding. How are you?
I'm going to harass your brain today, you know. Follow me now. We're talking pensions. But most importantly, and there are several issues involved here. There's the question of the private pension plans, the reforms that are contemplated, the question of the coverage. My numbers, and you can tell me if my numbers are outdated. You have 142,000 members in your private pension plans, and I think about 17,000 of those are retirees who are in receipt of pension payments. I have no idea what those pension payments are. My calculations, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that when you look at the pension fund assets of about $700 billion, it means that for each of those 142,000 members, you're dealing with $5 million of capital, no? Which over time, I imagine, will provide a reasonable pension for them when they retire. But as a Jamaican, are you concerned about, we have 1.3 million people in the workforce. You have 142,000 contributing to your pension schemes. The government has somewhere, I think, around 400,000 contributing to NIS. And NIS, of course, gives them the grand pension of $3,400 a week. And there's some double counting there because some of your pension contributors would also be in the NIS 400,000. But that leaves a vast number of persons in the workforce who are making no contribution to any pension plan. A tiny minority of them are perhaps making their own arrangements. They're saving their money, they're investing, they're buying a house here, an apartment there that they're going to rent out, and that will become their pension. But the vast majority of them, the higglers, the barbers, the taxi drivers, the small farmers, the carpenters, the masons, the construction workers, the shopkeepers, when they get old, they're going to be in trouble. Now, as Beauregard was just pointing out to me in New York, and it's something that I hadn't thought of, a lot of them invest in their children in terms of educating them, and that is their pension. You have 3 children who are doing well, and when you get old, them children not going to allow you to suffer, no? But we have a whole heap of people who don't have any of that kind of assurance or coverage. What do we as a nation do about them? I cited the case of the Scandinavian countries, where they tax the hell out of you. 25% GCT. But when you reach retirement age, they give you every citizen. Whether you work or you never work, whether whoever you are, you may never have contributed to any pension plan, but you had to pay the damn 25% every time you went to the shop. When you reach retirement age, you get a good pension that can sustain you for the rest of your life. What are the options open to a country like Jamaica?
Thank you for all of that. I really, really have a great passion for this area and seeing pension reform, effective pension reform take place in Jamaica and improve retirement security. And I really do see that as my contribution to nation building. And so I'm happy for this opportunity to speak about it. So you are correct. The numbers are very low and distressingly so. We have about, I think it's important that we look at both the private sector and public sector contributors because NIS is our first pillar. As you know, everybody, even self-employed persons, must contribute to the NIS. But the NIS structure will never, as it stands now, and I don't think it is intended to give you a pension that can cover you for life, right? It is a social security system that provides a pension benefit, but it also provides other benefits. Ill health benefits, disability benefits, maternity benefits, and there are quite a few benefits people don't know about. And so you have the NIS as the first pillar, but where you're going to really want to focus on in terms of your pension security is in that second pillar, which is your kind of private sector pension arrangement. And that includes the 142, that's a optimistic roundup. It's really 141,606 contributors. So almost getting to 142. And when you add the public sector workers who contribute to the public sector pension plan, that's approximately 80,000 contributors. In total, Mr. Golding, you're looking at 18% of the employed labor force being covered by pension in that second pillar we're talking about. So we're not really focusing on NIS because we know that's not going to be sufficient. And then, of course, people, as you said, supplement by the third pillar, which is their investments. They buy a house, they have stocks and bonds, etc. But it's not enough. And we have what we call a worsening old age dependency ratio, where the number of people aged 65 and over are greater than the number of persons in our working age population in Jamaica, 15 to 64. That has increased by over 68% since 1960. And when you look at fertility declining, birth rates declining, and higher migration rates of persons in their 30s, that old age dependency ratio is worsening. And you see that mentality of me pick me and my pension, I rebuke it in the name of Jesus. You cannot survive as your pension being your children. What it does, it creates this intergenerational dependence. It creates this intergenerational financial pressure where children are now starting to work. They want to save for themselves, create some level of financial independence for themselves, buy their home, invest, but they can't do that because they have to divert that money to now look after parents.
Why are you knocking that though?
No, conceptually, making sure your parents are okay is not a bad thing. That's in fact noble.
But it
cannot be your answer for retirement.
But you take a low income family out there, particularly in the rural areas, and I know plenty of them. I suspect you do as well. Where that mother sometimes is a single mother. She sacrificed, I mean, she wear the same dress to church every week because the money that she would use to buy a new dress, she have to pay the picnic school fees, right? So she sacrificed and she invested in them, and they succeed to do well. That may lead us into another argument as to whether or not we are doing justice to our investment in terms of the kind of educational system that we operate. But let's not go there now. But she invests in them. They do well. Why is it unreasonable for her to expect, well, look, I sacrificed for you. Now, don't make me go to bed hungry when I get old.
No, of course not. And as I said, we're not trying to, and my statement is not meant and could never be, generally applied to every single scenario. We're talking about a shift in a mindset, though, because if you're in a situation where you cannot reasonably save and look after your children at the same time, then, of course, you look after your children, and the expectation is that they do better and they thrive and are able to then kind of, provide a level of financial security for you because you've made that investment. It is the mentality that is far more pervasive when you can actually save and support your children, but you choose not to because your mentality is, I don't need to think about that. When my children start to work, they will take care of me. So I'm not trying to suggest that. Fair enough. You see what I'm saying? Because there will always be scenarios where there could be no other way than work it. And it brings tears to our eyes, all of us, when we see children come back home and build,
but
homes for their mothers and, take care of them, of course.
Let's look at the broad issue, though. I mean, even take the government workers. 20 years ago, I mean, you know the government system works. You work with government and they undertake to pay you a pension. And that's guaranteed in the Constitution. 20 years ago, and each year the government has to provide a budgetary line item for pensions. 20 years ago, it was $4.something billion that we had to provide. This year is $42 billion. It's becoming a headache for the Minister of Finance because at the rate at which the percentage of the budget that has to be set aside to pay government pensions has doubled, more than doubled in the last 20 years. And the government quite rightly recognizes that this is not sustainable. So they're looking to move it now to a contributory arrangement. And I hope that they won't rule out the possibility of engaging private pension fund managers to manage that fund, right? But so that is that aspect of it. I am still concerned. I mean, my helper, I mean, she struggles to kind of pay the rent and the light bill and the bus fare and the lunch money for the school people and so on. You know, she has the opportunity of NIS coverage, yes, but that provides a limited amount. What are we going to do about these people? Are we going to simply accept that, look, we have to find a way to enhance and expand the PATH program, so instead of providing $70 a week, we're going to provide $7,000 a week, and therefore we have to make provision to include that in the budget. Is that where we're going, or is there a way that we can find to make it affordable and rewardable for my helper to be part of a pension plan?
So there are a number of initiatives that can be considered, and in fact are being looked at now to strengthen the private sector pension arrangement. So that's that second pillar we're talking about, not NIS, but people voluntarily, contributing to pension arrangements, so that it eases ultimately the downstream impact on the government, on the fiscal, and eases the fiscal burden, right? Because at the end of the day, when we talk about social pensions, the PATH program, the grants, changing the NIS benefit structure, all of those things come at a cost, and they come at a cost to the government and therefore ultimately taxpayers. So I'll mention a few. One is, and this is number one on the list, is auto-enrollment. This is a big project that the Pension Industry Association of Jamaica is advocating for. In fact, we're in the middle of our discussion series on it. And really and it has seen a lot of success in other countries. And the concept, Mr. Golding, is that once you are working with someone, if that employer does not have a pension plan of its own, that employer is obligated to automatically enroll you in an approved retirement scheme. An approved retirement scheme is like your Scotia Bridge, NCB Smart, Proven Rock. You see the advertisements all over the place. Rather than expecting you, whether it be a helper or me on my own, to go to a retirement scheme provider and fill out a form and take all the steps and do salary deduction, paperwork and all of that, I don't have to think about it. My employer doesn't have a pension plan. He has to automatically put me in a retirement scheme. However, I can always come out. I can opt to come out of that plan if it is not a convenient time or if I don't want to participate. So I still control choice, and I still have the control over my retirement security, but it's that first step. And
in that enrollment, it is joint contributions?
That's a good question. So it would not be that the employer would be mandated to contribute. And the reason being that one of the things we're pushing for and advocating for is trying to get this implemented in a kind of frictionless way, because we want to kind of take the first step for the auto-enrollment to take place, and then we can look at revising design features such that there may be a mandating for employment contributions. But there doesn't seem to be an appetite at this time.
So after the enrollment, who contributes? The employer or an employee?
The employee would now be salary deducted. And what statistics show is that when you are saving through a paycheck salary deduction approach, you are 15 times more likely to save. If you do auto-enrollment, you're looking at 18 times more likely to save. And in fact, auto-enrollment in the U.S. into 401ks, you see participation going up by 35 to 67%, relative to arrangements where you have to take the step to go in on your own, the first step.
But the employer is getting off scot-free.
Well, what you find is that, yes, once you have an employer matching or any kind of minimum employer contribution rate, that, yes, you do find that there's greater success. Like in the UK, their NEST program, you find that very few people opt out, because why would I opt out of free money from my employer? But then at the same time, there is the whole issue of it being an additional tax on employers. And so it has to kind of go through, I think, a certain level of seasoning.
But the worker right now is bawling about his NHT deduction and so on. And he's going to see this as a tax.
But remember, the difference is that with NHT and NIS, you have to make those contributions. After what makes auto-enrollment an attractive approach is that all that's being done is that the first step is being done for you. We're just going to put you in. You always retain the ability to opt out.
So in other words, I can tell my employer, stop, don't take no more money out of my pay.
Right, but here's the thing.
Well, what value would that be to moving the thing forward?
Well, what behavioral science shows is that most people don't opt out. The same inertia and procrastination that keeps these individuals from opting in and going down to Proven Rock and knocking on the door and filling out that form is the same inertia operating that they don't come out.
Let me bounce something off you, because one of the things that we need, and I think you will agree, is that we need far more education of our people in terms of pension, all the various ramifications, pension issues, no, and why it makes sense and why they should take it seriously and why they should be prepared to commit themselves. But in terms of simplifying the process and perhaps making it more inducive. Almost 60 years ago, I remember Mr. Seaga introduced the Jamaica Unit Trust. And it was supposed to be a vehicle. The ordinary person didn't understand all the workings of the stock market and which stocks were good and which stocks were likely to provide the best dividends and so on. The Jamaica Unit Trust was set up for the small person to say, well, all right, here is my $1,000 or my $2,000. You guys know how to invest money. I don't know. So you invest it and you give me my returns. And they would then pool the funds and invest it in a basket of securities and whatnot, right? What I'm alluding to is, do we need an intervener that would say, well, all right, my helper not going to join no pension fund where they have to contribute money every week or every month. But if there is something like a unit trust where they can go and buy so many units, and when they get some more money, they can buy some more units, and they can build up an account. That account is invested. And when they get to the age of retirement, there's a formula that transforms all of those contributions and the investment and the yield and the earnings and so on to say, well, all right, now, here is the money. And it can either be, this is a lump sum, or this is the amount of money that you can get every month for the rest of your life. Am I talking rubbish?
No, that's certainly an option, and that falls under the third pillar of that, your individual additional savings. But remember, what makes pension fund savings and retirement savings so unique as distinct any other type of arrangement is that it is tax-free. So your contributions are made before tax is deducted from your salary, the investment returns also, the accretions on those investments, the interest is also not taxed. And so it's not until you're in what we say in the industry, the decumulation phase, the drawdown phase, when you're starting to get your pension now, you find that the tax is applied. So you get greater returns if you save through a pension arrangement, which a unit trust would not be.
But we're talking about two different sets of people, though, with the greatest respect, Sanya. I
want to talk about those people.
Hold on. I am talking about the vendor down at Carnation Market. Who sell everything? Who sells everything from hairdressing to phone cards? Mm-hmm. Who makes a reasonable amount of money, but who right now is unpensioned?
So I think those persons, the unit trust option, yes, possible. But what I think works for persons in that demographic is micro pensions. So I spoke about auto-enrollment, which is for persons who are in an employment arrangement where the employer just automatically enrolls them and deducts the money. Micropensions is what you look at for low-income workers and informal sector workers.
Expand on that for me, because
micropensions, and it's a concept and it's an approach that's been rolled out in a lot of countries like India, Kenya has it, and with great success. With great success, but with a small caveat I want to make at the end. What the concept behind it is making many contributions, small contributions, but more often than you would in your traditional arrangement. So imagine somebody who has a phone. We have mobile penetration. It's very high in Jamaica. And you have credit.
Oh, Lord. We seem to have lost Mrs. Goffe. I'm trying to get her back for me, because she was onto something now that I found very interesting. Micropensions. I haven't come across that terminology before. Micropensions. Aimed at, self-employed persons. We have, and those perhaps account for a substantial, if not the vast majority of our workforce. Persons who are not employed to anybody, them hustle. Cultivate them land, them run them like a shop. Them do them like a barbering or them tailoring. How do we pensionize them? How do we get them to a stage where when they get old and they can't work no more, they have something that they can look forward to. I'm trying to get back Mrs. Goffe, because I want to hear more about that arrangement. She mentioned that it is something that is already being done in Kenya and India. And when I get a chance, I go to do some research to see exactly what their experience has been. Mrs. Goffe, are you back?
Yes, I'm back. I'm not sure what just happened.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay, so micropension. So imagine now it's for your informal workers, low-income workers. And it really, the concept behind it is you make small, but often.
No, you're gone again. What is wrong with the phone system? Into an important aspect of the discussion, and we keep getting disrupted. Mrs. Goffe is a senior person. She's an Eisenhower Fellow of 2020. She's a director of the NCB Financial Group, National Commercial Bank Jamaica Limited, Jamaica Producers Group, chairman of the Stratus Alternative Funds. She's a big shot lady. I was just telling my listeners about your CV.
Oh.
And how impressive it is.
Oh, thank you.
And I want you to impress me with this micro pension business, because I've never heard of the term, and I'm anxious to hear.
Okay, I hope we don't get cut off again. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so let's go again. Micro pensions for your informal sector workers, low-income workers. The concept behind it is that you would make small contributions, but you would be making those contributions more often than you would in your traditional arrangement. So traditionally, you make a contribution every month, right? That's generally the kind of frequency. But micro pensions, the concept is you have your phone, you have phone credit, and you get a prompt from your provider, your retirement scheme provider, to say, do you want to contribute to your pension arrangement, save towards your retirement security, a brighter future for tomorrow, some kind of inspirational, encouraging message, and you can click yes or no on your phone to move $200, $1,000, $500 over to your account. But you get those prompts more often than you would, but you don't have to think about it. It's frictionless. You go to the gas station, the taxi driver pulls up. He wants to fill up with $800, but he gets a prompt. Or if he's using a card, gets a prompt to pay a little bit more towards his pension arrangement. You go to the shop and you're paying. You get a prompt when you're running your card or whatever it may be to make a top up to your pension contribution. For this to work, though, it requires a certain level of technological plumbing, I like to say, to support it, where there's a kind of interconnectedness between your phone, between your card, and your retirement scheme provider. It advances the national financial inclusion strategy of the government, and it also ensures people are kind of encouraged regularly, but more regularly than normal, to put a little something towards their contribution.
Constant nudging.
Constant nudging, Mr. Golding, that is it. And that nudge, and you use the word, and I'm sure you used it deliberately, behavioral science is fundamentally surrounded on the concept of nudging. Similarly with the auto-enrollment, we do that first nudge. We kind of put you in, and it's the same kind of thing with micropensions. Now, the issue, though, is what we've seen in the countries that have had great success is that you have a lot of people signing up for the accounts and even making the contributions. The question that comes up, though, is one of sustainability. When I say sustainability, I mean adequacy. So when you hit retirement now and you can take that lump sum, is it enough for the 20 years you are likely to live in retirement?
Yeah, but couple of questions, though, Sanya. Who would provide that service? Is it the existing pension fund entities, or is that requires a new creature on the landscape?
It could be done and facilitated by our existing retirement scheme providers. But
so and that $200 that I send when you prompt me at the gas station, that $200 is going to be invested somewhere. It's going to earn some income. So when I reach the age when I'm expecting to get pension, it's not that $200 you're talking to me about. You're talking to me about 200 plus whatever that money has earned. Is that how it works?
Exactly. And remember, is that earnings that you get is tax-free. While you're accumulating it, it's tax-free.
Yes.
You're going to get tax. And some of these people are going to be below the tax threshold. So when they do get to the stage where they are, they're eligible. I like the phraseology you use. I see you're very deliberate when you see Mr. Golin, because you didn't say retire, because some of these people will work way into their 80s and 90s, but they're at a place where they're eligible to take that pension from the retirement provider. They may not even have to get taxed at that point, depending on where they are in the threshold.
Tell me a little more about the experience. You mentioned Kenya and India. Anywhere else? What about Chile? Because they're normally way ahead in terms of pension.
They are, but the funny thing is that with Chile, so they don't have micro pensions in Chile. I don't believe they have that. They do have auto enrollment, and the success rate for auto enrollment has been fairly low because they have shifted the auto enrollment program to be mandatory for self-employed workers, which completely kind of goes against the whole concept. So it's almost like a NIS where you're mandated to participate, but you can come out. Except in Chile, you can come out, and nobody was participating. So Chile is not a very good example for auto enrollment. The UK and certain states in the US are excellent examples for auto enrollment. In the case of micro pensions, though, you find it's countries with large numbers of low-income informal workers. So that would be like, your Kenya, Nigeria, there are a couple others, India, but those are the case examples that are held up as, the success ones. But as I said, you always have the question of, will it be enough? But Mr. Golding, it's more than you would have had if you didn't have the program in place.
But have you and your association, have you sort of brought this to the public table for discussion? Because I'm hearing about this for the first time.
Yes, so auto-enrollment, we're definitely championing and pushing auto-enrollment, and like I said, we've started the sensitization engagement phase of it with stakeholders, and it's been going very well. We have 2 more sessions this week, and then we move on to talking to Minister of Finance, FSC, BOJ, etc. And they generally have a sense of what we're doing, right? But we haven't had a formal meeting. Micropensions, the FSC has engaged an external consultant to and we've had meetings with him to really explore the viability for micropensions in Jamaica, because the IDB had rolled out a retirement savings lab, Mr. Golding, in Latin American countries, and they piloted micropensions in quite a few of those countries, and what they found was that technological plumbing, that support, through the phone system, through the kind of automatic deductions, etc., was what was critical in its success. And so even if we get a kind of government buy-in and say, okay, yes, we're going to do it, there are a lot of other, elements that have to kind of, form part of it, but it can work. And like I said, we have high levels of mobile penetration in this country. And so there is a case for it, and it is something that the PIAJ supports. But the FSC, I know, is leading the charge in terms of doing consultations and doing a kind of stress testing. I don't know if stress testing is the right phrase, but they've done a kind of exploratory. And the last I checked on it was that they were waiting for the report from the consultants.
Tell me, what is your understanding of what?
Just for your listeners who may want to learn more about it, the FSC did produce a paper on micropensions, and I believe it's on their website.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Minister Clark, I've been speaking recently about pension reform. What is your understanding of what his focus is? Is it just the 50 or 60,000 civil servants, or the 100,000 public sector workers, or is he talking about a broader program of pension reform? And this idea that you have now excited me about micropensions, is that part of the framework of reform that he's talking about, or that's something that has to be mounted?
Okay, so the reform he would have mentioned in Parliament, certainly if we're talking about the same comments he made, would have been in relation to the amendments to the private sector pension plan, private sector pension framework. Mm. I don't think micropensions is yet there because, as I said, I still think it's in the kind of exploratory investigation analysis stage. And the FSC would, be championing that. And I guess if it's like if they get a sense of it being viable and something that could work, it would then move on to the next phase of engagement with other government officials. I imagine that's how it would go. But in terms of the pension reform that Minister Clark referred to, that's been reform that's been in the pipeline for quite some time, and it will see the strengthening of the retirement arrangements. But it doesn't necessarily take us further in terms of moving the needle on coverage as in percentage of the employed labor force who will be covered. So things like micropensions and auto-enrollment, and I could talk for days about both, but certainly auto-enrollment, that goal is to move the needle from that 18% to 35, 40%, 50%. And remember, we have tourism sector workers. And if you include tourism sector workers, if it is as successful as Minister Bartlett would like it to be, you could see coverage, even without auto-enrollment and micropensions, moving to 47%. But that assumes 350,000 tourism workers enrolled in the Tourism Workers Pension Fund. That's optimistic. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it is optimistic. But remember, with tourism workers, you cannot opt out. So you're like, once you get everybody enrolled in it as they ought to be, you're going to lock them in. So that's part of what Minister Clark was talking about, locking in contributions so people, when they leave one job and go to another, they don't just take their cash portion, whatever they might be eligible for, and run off and buy shoes in New York. They are locked in until retirement, capping the vesting period so that employers who have these long 10-year, 15-year vesting periods where you can't get your employer contribution. You're not entitled to that part of your pension benefit unless you've worked with the employer for 10 years, 15 years. That's going to be capped at 5 years. So those things strengthen your retirement benefit, but it doesn't necessarily increase the number of persons in the net.
Tell me, that tourism workers pension initiative, could that become a template for other sectors, for example, the BPO sector, the construction sector? Is it something that we could replicate to try and boost the pension coverage?
Yes, I think it could be. And what we see auto-enrollment as doing as a kind of, I don't want to say halfway house but as another approach to the basket of options, is to kind of that same automatic requirement to enroll tourism workers, that's there for auto-enrollment for every employer. It doesn't matter the sector. The difference, though, is that auto-enrollment has that option to come out if you would like. But with tourism workers, you can't opt out. So, yes, it definitely would be. And with tourism workers, the employer has to contribute. I must tell you, the tourism workers pension arrangement is something to be really applauded. I have spoken of, just mentioned in informal conversations at these pension seminars I go to, internationally. And the fascination by my colleagues who are a part of well-established pension environments in Germany, Australia, Canada. They're so fascinated by what we have been able to achieve with the tourism workers scheme.
What's the contribution level that applies there?
It's 5. I think it starts at 3 and then it moves to 5 if it's not 5 at the start. But that's where it is.
And it's equal on both parts, or?
Yes, it's a match. Mm-hmm. It's a match. And one of the things with auto enrollment.
Tell me before you go on. Who is going to manage those funds, the tourism pension funds?
So there was an arm's length bidding process, and an investment manager was appointed. So several investment managers submitted bids. Mm-hmm. And Sagicor was selected as the investment manager. There's a board of trustees for the fund. It's a fund established under statute. And Sagicor is the investment manager, and Guardian is the administrator. Administrator being the body that produces your benefit statements, tells you how much money you have, who are your beneficiaries, manages that process. So one administrator, one investment manager, 2 separate entities. Mm. But I was just going to make one last point, Mr. Golding. Even though auto-enrollment, as we are proposing it, because I don't know what ultimately will happen, I do expect and hope for it to be embraced by the government. But one of the features, the design features, is that even though you have the power and the right to opt out, every year your employer is required to automatically put you back in. There's automatic re-enrollment. Why? Because people want to save. People want to save for retirement, you know. We are a country of savers. When you think about the informal partners that people throw and in their communities, you know, daily partner, weekly partner, quarter, you know, people want to save. It's just that there are times when they're not able to save now. And so the kind of auto re-enrollment encourages greater levels of kind of stickiness in terms of contributions and staying in the retirement schemes that you're enrolled in.
And what access do they have to those funds when they save them?
I love your questions. So once you're automatically enrolled in these retirement scheme arrangements, remember this is all a proposal. I want to ensure your listeners still remember that this is a proposal. It's not law yet. We hope to champion it to law, but it's a proposal. You would be locked in just like all retirement scheme providers, savers are now. So if you are not in a pension arrangement with your employer or you're self-employed and you go to NCB and you start saving in NCB Smart, that money is locked in until retirement. You can move it from NCB Smart to Proven, to Sagicor, to Scotia as you wish, or to an employer pension plan if you move to an employer with a pension plan. But you cannot get that cash during your retirement savings lifetime, if you know what I mean, in your working life.
What prevents that? I mean, if let us say that I'm in one of these schemes and my money is saved at NCB, and my mother dies and I can't bury her, I can't access those funds.
I just feel like our conversation is scripted, even though it is not, because my next statement is going to be, except that what is on the table as part of the amendments that are coming is the ability to take hardship withdrawals. I love your questions. So hardship withdrawals is a recognition. It is an answer to that strictness of the locking in, because it makes it so unattractive for people. People are like, I don't care about tax savings if I can't get my money in an emergency. I would rather just go down to the bank and put it in there. So hardship withdrawals is a recognition that people must be able, you need to recognize that if people can't live during their working life, who cares? They may never get to retirement. Like, what does that look like? And so hardship withdrawals is on the table as a proposal by the FSC for you during your lifetime to be able to take a certain number, it's going to be a cap, certain number of withdrawals from your account, capped at no more than 20% of the value of your account. This is all a proposal now. And it would only be in certain prescribed circumstances. So, you know, funeral expenses, as you said, your mother died, that's one. Disabilities, a physical disability or requiring you to you know, you're not able to work any longer. There is permanent illness, as in a doctor has determined that you're likely to die, terminal illness, you're likely to die in the next year or two, as in terminal illness will be strictly defined. And those withdrawals you would be able to make once you kind of make a submission to the trustees or the relevant controllers of the fund.
But Sanya, When are you going to bring this thing forward for public discussion? You're keeping it a secret. I'm hearing about it for the first time.
No, it's not a secret. In fact, I wouldn't say it's a secret at all. When the FSC's proposals have been on the table for some time, they're now at the almost final stages of prepping the bill. So that's going to get circulated to the industry very shortly, we expect, based on FSC's assurances. And then I'm not sure if their proposals are on their website, but they've put forward these proposals for some time. But the truth is, Mr. Golding, over the years, and after a lot of feedback from industry players, it has, the proposals have been modified. And so I wouldn't even encourage anybody to look at that document any longer. I would just say hang tight until the bill is coming. And that bill is going to basically rework the Pensions Act, the Private Sector Pensions Act that we have now. It's going to replace the entire thing. And so we are going to see things like I said, the minimum vesting, easier way to make amendments, greater controls over surplus in pension plans. As you know, that's a big contentious issue, always in the courts. Greater control over surplus. Members and beneficiaries will now know how surplus is applied in a lot more of a greater transparent way. Actuaries signing off on surplus distributions. So there's a whole host of changes that are coming. That are going to strengthen, and this is the distinction, it will strengthen your retirement benefits that you will get at retirement, but it is not necessarily going to increase the number of pension savers. And that is when we need to change the choice architecture and look at things like the auto-enrollment and the micropensions, because that is what we need to do, is make it so simple that at a touch of a button, this is micropensions now, you are saving for your retirement. We need to make it that once you get to that employer on day one, he's statutorily obligated to put you in a retirement scheme if he doesn't have a pension arrangement.
Are you satisfied that the changes that have been made to the restrictions regarding the type of investment that pension funds could be placed in? Are you satisfied that those changes are enough, or we need to be more flexible?
Okay, so we're changing tack a little bit. Yes, the investment regulations were amended 2 years ago, I think, 2 years ago. And the changes have helped a little, but certainly...
I mean, have you noticed any increase in the earnings for pension funds?
Well, I don't handle investment management returns at all, so I wouldn't be able to speak with any specificity in terms of earning returns. So what I do know is that investment managers and trustees continue to be hungry for greater diversity. They're hungry for returns. They want more options. Because of the level of restrictions and the type of restrictions, so as much as some things have loosened and the universe of investable assets has expanded a bit, it is still pretty restrictive. And when you look at things like certain types of assets, certain types of jurisdictions, you can't invest in assets coming in CARICOM.
Are we more restrictive here than in other countries that you're familiar with?
Oh yes. We are. And
I think we need to concern ourselves. I mean, Mayor Motley made a statement recently which I found very, very interesting. She was dealing with the question of bank fees. Mm-hmm. But she says, look, if I need to ensure that my money is secure, I will employ a security guard. I put my money with bankers because I want my money to be well managed. Now, pension fund management is not just about securing those funds and making sure that the funds are available for the purpose for which they were intended, but enhancing the value of those funds, no?
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course. It makes no sense. Exactly, because at the end of the day, what's the point of having people in a pension plan and we have our numbers at 60-70% people covered in a pension arrangement, but the actual value of those benefits is so low because the investment restrictions don't allow you to maximize returns.
And inflation is always an enemy.
Exactly. And remember, trustees are fiduciaries, right? So that at the end of the day, we have a regulator. The regulator regulates, audits, and does their assessment regularly on pension funds and the investments that are taking place. And that level of prudence is there. The FSC has said it's moved to a risk-based approach of regulating pension plans. And we have seen after 17, 18 years, investment managers generally, they are generally, I wouldn't say conservative, but they generally are very careful. You don't have reckless investment managers in Jamaica.
Well, I do feel,
lose their license.
I do feel perhaps because of the meltdown in the 1990s, I think we went from one extreme too far to the other.
Yes. Yeah.
And we need to find a balance. But Sanya, this has been a scintillating discussion. I'm out of time. I'm sorry. But can I put you on notice? I'm going to want to invite you back for us to continue this at some time in the future.
Yes, of course. I'd be happy to. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
All right, Mr. Goulding.
Good. We've been talking pensions today, pension reform. They need to make sure that more people have the security of knowing that when they can't work anymore, they have something to live off. That's been our program today. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope you'll be able to join me next week, Monday. We're going to grab another topic. We're going to delve into it as we try to do every week to inform and to engage you in such a way that you can form your own opinions. Thank you so much. See you next week, Monday. Thanks to my producer. Thanks to my studio engineer. Thanks to everybody who makes this possible. Thank you all so much. See you next week.